I wanted to share with you a couple things about working with code in the script editor. So in the past video, what I mentioned to do is that when you wanted to run a piece of code, you could highlight the line of code that you want, and then you can click run. And we notice here that whatever I highlighted comes down into the console. You don't necessarily have to highlight. However, as you're just beginning to work with R, I would suggest highlighting what you want to run, simply because it just gives you a look of exactly what you're going to be putting into the console. I could just click run here, even though this isn't highlighted. And we noticed that what it returned was the comment and it returned the code. So what it did was it ran the line of code and it ran the code before. So I could have easily just highlighted both of these and I could have clicked run and it would have assigned the same thing. Now we can also highlight and run multiple pieces of code. So if I want to run both of these lines, I could highlight them both. I could click run and then it'll run everything that's been highlighted. So multiple pieces of code. Or if I wanted to run all three, I could click run and it'll run all three into the code. Now a shortcut to running code, which I'll try not to do on the video so that way you can always see what I'm doing. But a shortcut to run the code is command return. So right now my cursor is on line 2. If I just hit command return, it'll run the code. So what I could do, I could just highlight everything. I could click command return and it'll run all the code into the console. Also, one additional little shortcut that's handy is using comment and uncomment. With these comments, I've used the # or the hashtag. So a shortcut that we could use, say for instance, we have these 3 lines of code that we want to run, but for whatever reason, we don't want to run y gets 5. We could just add a #. A shortcut to do that would be Shift Command C. So I'm going to hold down Shift Command C, and then it'll also add a #. And then I could hit Shift Command C again, and it'll take out the #. And then what will happen is, if we want to run all of this, R would bypass this code. I'm going to hit Shift Command C again. Now, why is that particularly important? Well, what happens if we have maybe 3 lines or 10 lines or 20 lines of code that we don't necessarily want run? We could highlight everything, we could hit Shift Command C, and it'll all be commented out. So that makes it really easy just to comment out things that you don't want run, but you also don't want to delete the code. I'm going to hit that again. If you go into the code, and then you could go down to comment, uncomment lines, and you could click also, but it also gives you the shortcut here. Also, one thing to notice is that after you run a piece of code, the cursor is always going to jump down to the next line. So I'll click run. It'll come down to the next line. I can click run again. It'll come down to the next line. You can click run. It'll come down to the next line. Also, just be aware of where your cursor is and how it reacts to every time that you run code.